Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to warmly welcome you to our today's event, How to Protect Yourself Against Russian Disinformation, Slovak Perspective. With me in the studio, Stefan Izak, analyst at the Info Security Slovakia. Good afternoon, Stefan.
Good afternoon.
So we all, I believe, will agree that Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine involved an increased involvement of Russian government agencies in spreading disinformation in countries that are not directly involved in conflict. And now I would like to give the floor to Stefan, and he will show us some, I believe, very interesting data connected to Slovak perspectives on this topic.
Yes, thank you very much, Liliana.
And we are waiting for the presentation to be
Yes.
shown.
Okay, let's go to the first slide. So my name is Stefan Izak, and I prepared you a short presentation about last 2 years in Slovakia. So it will be a kind of introduction to the current situation in Slovakia regarding the Russian war in Ukraine and the Russian informational influence in Slovakia. Title of the presentation is Russian Narratives as Political Program in the Country between High Tatras and Danube, which is of course Slovakia. So we can go to the next slide, please. So firstly, we need to understand the pre-war context which we had in Slovakia, because right now at this moment, after the 2 years of the Russian invasion to Ukraine, our public opinion is going back to the state which has been in Slovakia like two years ago, and I think that propaganda and disinformation are playing a significant role in it, in the shaping of the current public opinion in Slovakia. Because before Russian invasion, pro-Kremlin propaganda in Slovakia was pretty influential. All researchers among the Visegrad countries has been showing Slovakia as a country with the strongest pro-Kremlin sentiment and as anti-Western sentiments, especially toward USA and toward NATO. EU was kind of in a better image. And in this graph I'm showing you right now, we can see public opinion from the end of the January 2022, so 1 month before Russian full-scale invasion to Ukraine. The question in this public opinion poll is who is responsible for the tensions on the Russia-Ukrainian border and Baltic states. And you see that the most people, 44%, were blaming not Russia, but USA, NATO. And only 35% were blaming Russia for this tension on the Ukrainian border. So in this social mood, we came into the February 2022. The whole situation in Slovakia at that time was accompanied with a heat debate about the DCA between USA and Slovakia, which was adopted, I don't remember the exact date, but somewhere around the middle of February 22. And pro-Kremlin actors in Slovakia were against this agreement, of course, and they were portraying it as a first step to the war with Russia, where USA is forcing Slovakia in their discourse. So these actors were basically saying that Americans are taking control over our military airports, and this is the end of the Slovakia sovereignty, and they will bring here their weapons and so on and so on. And even opposition parties at that time were organizing protests in Slovakia, claiming that the West is responsible for the tension in the Ukrainian border, and that we will never go to go against Russia, to the war with Russia, and we want peace. We can go to the next slide, which is showing you a public opinion poll from the end of the February. So day after Russia invaded Ukraine, and we see different perspective. We see that this Russian invasion was a little bit shock for the society, not only for the society but also for the pro-Kremlin actors in Slovakia, because you can see on that public opinion poll that most people at the end of the February 22 blame Russia for the invasion to Ukraine, more than 60%, and only, of course, it's not only, but 25% blame USA. So we see the slightly change of the social mood in Slovakia in that time. And it was quite a shock for a pro-Kremlin actor, as I mentioned, who were saying that Russia will not attack anybody, and that the only aggressor here is USA. Yeah. But this social mood are changing in the last 2 years. But we will go to that later. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, that the Russian invasion was shock for pro-Kremlin actors in Slovakia because they were replying these phrases that Russia will not attack, etc., etc. So we could observe that they were dividing this camp of pro-Kremlin actors in Slovakia, divided into two camps. The smaller camp was openly supporting Russia war and its reasoning of the war, and they're going to denazify Ukraine, demilitarize Ukraine, and so on. But the biggest group of then pro-Kremlin actors in Slovakia, they started to condemn Russian aggression. They say that it was a violation of international law. All political parties in that time was claiming support for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. But still, this second group of pro-Kremlin actors were blaming the West for provoking Russia, which had to defend itself and these pro-Kremlin actors were using the tactic what we called whataboutism. So they called, okay, Russia attacked Ukraine, but let's see the USA invasions, for example, to Iraq. Let's talk about Yugoslavia. Let's talk about Libya, etc. So the classical whataboutism. So they were trying to blame the West. And one important note, when I speak about Slovak pro-Kremlin actors, I don't speak only about the politicians. Of course, they are most visible. They are the most impactful, and also data from social networks show that they have a hugest reach in a society. So, of course, the politicians are most impactful. But we also have a kind of ecosystem of as they call themselves, like alternative media in Slovakia, which are basically the pro-Kremlin media, and also some pro-Kremlin NGOs and bloggers and individual channels. So it's not only political actors, but they are the most impactful. They are most visible because from their institutional positions, they have this strong power to form the public opinion in the society. And during these 2 years, we observed that the second group of pro-Kremlin actors, this more moderate group, they have radicalized its rhetoric, closing it to the open Putin supporters, but not reaching the level of the most hardcore supporters. So we will see it in another slide about narratives. So next slide, please. So if you look at the most common narratives, this one I call systematical narratives, and then on the next slide I will show you what I call the situational disinformation propaganda cases. These systematical narratives are being reproduced systematically, not only some of them from the February 22, and some of them even even since the 2014 and the start of the Russian military aggression to Ukraine. But if you look on the narratives, they are mostly focusing on the criticizing the Ukraine and the US instead of openly supporting Putin. So the aim of these narratives is to support antipathy to the West and Ukraine. Of course, when we speak about Ukraine, that it's a country ruled by fascists, it's a country ruled by the West, and the West provoked Russia, and about the oppression of Russian-speaking population in Donbass since 2014. Yeah, we are like basically blaming the West and Ukraine for the start of this invasion, and we are putting the blame from real aggressor Russia to the victim and to the countries who wants help this victim, which is Ukraine. But I believe that these narratives are not solely on in a Slovakian online space, but they are well known also in other countries in Europe. So we can go to another slide. Yeah, here is what I call the situational disinformation and propaganda cases. They are like the reaction of this pro-Kremlin ecosystem to the concrete events which are happening during the war. So when Russians were conquering Ukrainian territory, they were speaking that they found a lot of biolabs financed by the USA, targeted and kind of producing the biological weapons, against Russia. We had the case of disinformation about the radiation from the warehouse in the Khmelnytsky region, and this radiation should go to Poland and to Slovakia, and so on and so on. And basically, these situational disinformation propaganda cases, they are legitimizing the systematical narratives which the conflict is framed by this pro-Kremlin political and media ecosystem in Slovakia. So the basic aim is not openly supporting Russia, but criticizing Ukrainian people, Ukrainian army, and the West, who is trying to help Ukraine defend itself against Russian aggression. We can go to the next slide. And we see in this graph that the pro-Kremlin propaganda and disinformation have influence. I'm not saying that it's only factor on the changing public opinion in Slovakia, but I think it's a very important factor. Yeah, because we see that this is the result of the Globsec research from the May 2023, and it shows that the 40% of Slovakian population believe that Russia is to blame for the invasion of Ukraine, but more than 34% blame the West, and even 70% blame Ukrainian. Yeah, and if we compare this research with the research from the same institution in May 2022, we see that the number of people who believe that the Russia is to blame decreased, a number of people who believe that the West is to blame increased. Yeah, you can see in also the smaller graph in the right top corner. So yeah, the situation about the public opinion in Slovakia is changing, like back to the times before the invasion. And we can go to the another slide. If we to another slide, please. And if we want to look what has changed through these 2 years, basically in the category of narratives of pro-Kremlin propaganda, not too much. Yeah, these actors are still reproducing systematical narratives about the West, about the Ukrainian fascists, etc., etc. But there is a huge institutional change, because part of the pro-Kremlin opposition in that time, since February 22 until October 23, in that part of the opposition parties They formed a coalition after the last parliamentary election in Slovakia. So there is a huge institutional change, and many pro-Kremlin propagandists have new positions in the state and in the government. Also, alternative media, which were producing these pro-Kremlin narratives, even before the Russian full-scale invasion, they basically became, since the October 23, after election, they basically became governmental media, which serves as a platform for submissive interviews with the prime minister and the other ministers, and uncritical sharing of their statements. Yeah, so right now we can observe also in Slovakia something that can be characterized as a two-faced politics. On the one hand, maybe also the guests from the other countries noticed some statements from our prime ministers and our ministers about the Ukraine. So there is still anti-Ukrainian, anti-Western rhetoric, it must be said. But on the other hand, our military contracts are go on, and also our government didn't veto EU path for the Ukraine. But what is the challenge for the future is the long-term effect of this rhetoric, because anti-Ukrainian, anti-Western, pro-Kremlin rhetoric can distort public discourse in favor of Russia and might be dangerous in the future. And next slide. And in the topic of disinformation, propaganda, and Russian influence in Slovakia, the very important steps have been taken by the new government, which I see as a very problematic, because in the last 5 years, state established a couple of expert institutions with dealing with the strategic communication, so Stratcom. For example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior, Government Office, also the police pages were very active in debunking of disinformation and in strategic communication. But these expert teams focusing on Stratcom and debunking disinformation and monitoring Russian influence were basically, after the last election, were basically forced to leave their position. And now this position in these institutions are empty, or political nominees from the government parties with no expert background in the topics were put in the positions. So in a long-term perspective, it's basically the weakening state defensibility against hybrid threats, I think. Of course, these institutions were not enough, but they were great first steps in these topics. But now they are basically unfunctional in our context. And also our Ministry of Culture and Ministry I don't know which one ministry was that, of Justice, they canceled the grant schemes for the projects about disinformation, about propaganda, about political extremism, educational projects for critical thinking and media literacy. So another step in this weakening our ability to challenge the Russian influence in Slovakia. And the last slide, which will be what to do next. I mean, people who deals with these topics, that it's nothing new for them, you know. The problem is, of course, political will. Yeah. So I believe I won't say anything new or anything you don't know or anything I don't know. I think there are a couple of levels in which we can deal with the pro-Kremlin propaganda and disinformation. On the individual level, like every user of internet should know what they are consuming, from where they are consuming, should know how to read with understanding the text. Then, of course, the level of civic society. So I mean the targeted activities of media and NGOs. And right now in Slovakia, I must say that these NGOs and the media are pretty active these topics, so they are doing a great job. But the problem is the help from the state, because the state is the main stakeholder in this topic, and has the most power, yeah, to do something. If we speak about the education, yeah, about the education, not only new experts on the information security, but also like common education on media literacy, critical thinking in the schools, the history, sociology, and so on and so on. So we have huge gaps in that in Slovakia. But again, we are not the only country in the Europe who has things to improve in their educational system. And also, state must focus on a strategic communication, yeah, and fight against hybrid trades. Now, this part of the state tasks are in danger, yeah, because of a new government who are doing basically the opposite. So they are going backwards in that. And of course, the common cooperation of the state with the civic society, other countries, international institutions, social media platforms. It's another task ahead of not only Slovakia, of course, but all these steps. If we will take it right now, the results will be visible maybe in a couple of years, a couple of decades. So it's a very, very long run, and some of the actions must be taken as soon as possible. But I'm not sure if we are in Slovakia, especially on the state level right now. But we will see what the future will bring. And I don't want to take more time, so this is the end of my presentation. So it was just kind of a brief introduction about the current situation in Slovakia in the last 2 years in Slovakia. And if somebody will have some comments or questions, you are welcome to do so. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stefan. We already have some questions actually, so I will go briefly to them. Of course, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very, very interesting. So the first question that we got, because you presented different kind of narratives that are being present. And the question is how those narratives changed compared to the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Because I don't know, in Poland, for example, different kind of topics were used, yes, by the Russian disinformation in the beginning of the war, and completely different kind of narratives are being used right now. So do you see any change in those narratives in Slovakian landscape?
Yeah, it must be said that there are some evergreens who are reproducing all the time. We saw them this morning, yesterday, and we saw them in February 22. This is the systematical narratives I was talking about the Ukrainian fascism, about the Western interference in the Ukrainian domestic politics, and so on. But of course, we have some new narratives which are popping out, and it matters on what events are going on. For example, on the start of the invasion, there were no narratives about some agriculture, about some farmers, about Ukrainian agricultural cultural products. But in the summer of 2023 and the September of 23, in the peak of the Slovak pre-election campaign, it was one of the top topics. Yeah, this embargo, which the Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and I'm not sure if also Romania established toward to the agricultural products from Ukraine. So yeah, this was something new. that we could see. So more like into the economic sphere, yes. Then also during the 2023 year, the very popular narrative was about that the Slovakian guys will be mobilized to the war to Ukraine. Yeah. Also, the elections, there will be some election fraud in September 23. And that time, opposition party were trying to fight against the pro-Western coalition, pro-Ukrainian coalition. So they were pushing out these narratives and to portray the that time current government, of course, in the black light. So yeah, there is changing. It depends on what is going on in Ukraine. Of course, we have a lot of narratives about the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the 2023. There was not such these statements in March 2022. Yeah, but when this somebody call it failure of a Ukrainian counteroffensive, there were a lot of narratives that you see that this war there are no like military solution because this counteroffensive failed, so we need to negotiate with Putin, and we need to discuss if Ukrainians should or should not leave some territories to Russia. So this kind of situational narratives connected to the current events, they are always changing, and they are forming in the line with the current events, and of course in the line what Russia is saying. Yeah, because it's pro-Kremlin propaganda in Slovakia. So yeah, there are some, like I said, evergreens, and always new repertoire, I would say.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much. It's interesting. I mean, especially this narrative about the Slovak boys that will be sent to Ukraine. Like we don't have it in Poland, so it's interesting that even though we are so close to each other, this kind of narratives were not present in anywhere in the media.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
this is
it's very
because this
interesting.
is in a, as I understand, in a Poland on the Ukrainian situation, you have like the consensus, even peace, and now the Donald Tusk. They are not very different to the Ukrainian case, but in Slovakia there was huge differences between current coalition, in that time opposition, and now opposition, and in that time some of this party were in coalition. And for example, current coalition parties, when they were in opposition, they were trying to fear the society, that you see that these guys in the government, they don't have any moral standards, they will send you to fight in Ukraine, but we won't do it. So they try to create fear in the Slovak society, and then put selves in the role that, don't worry, we will save you, just vote for us, and nothing will happen if we will form the government. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like the typical political battle in Slovakia, and
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yeah.
in the pre-election campaign, they were abusing this topic.
It's very interesting because exactly the same narrative was present in US regarding sending the babies to fight in Ukraine. So you are the two very, let's say, distinctive examples if we talk about this kind of narratives. So you mentioned like that somehow the Russian disinformation, can we say that was influencing some political events in Slovakia?
Um, you mean Russian disinformation produced by some Russian state bodies, like Russian state, like called the embassy, Russian embassy?
Yes, for
Or you
example.
mean, yeah, we had one example of that,
Mhm.
because some propaganda is shared by the official Russian channels, which is like the Russian state, some Russian channels like RT, Sputnik, and so on and so on, and the embassies. But the most of propaganda in Slovakia is being spread by Slovak pro-Kremlin actors, so Slovak
Mhm.
politicians, Slovak media, Slovak citizens. Yeah, we can speak a lot about their motivation, if they believe in that, if they have some finance or whatever. But the thing is that the most of propaganda in Slovakia is created and shared by these Slovak actors. But we have one very interesting example how the concrete disinformation can touch like the life of the common humans. In the September 2022, it was the time when Ukrainian counteroffensive were pushing back Russian troops from the Kharkiv region, and they liberated Balaklia, Shevchenkovo, Izium, and they found these mass graves in Izium. And right in that time, when this was discovered, Russian embassy in Slovakia posted a Facebook post that the Russian graveyard of Russian soldiers from the First World War was damaged in one Slovakian small village. And when the Russian embassy posted this post, this ecosystem of various alternative media, they started to be very active, and they were resharing this post that look that we are not paying tribute for the dead Russian soldiers, that we are Russophobic and so on. But of course, this graveyard, this cemetery, it was not damaged. Yet there were done some fixation of the graves, but it was not destruction. Yeah, we must say it was not destruction. How this Russian embassy were portraying that, and this mayor of this small eastern Slovakia village, he said that no, that nothing bad is happening to the cemetery. Everything is okay. We just need to do some reparation of the graves. Yeah, but the people who believed that this version of this event, which were produced by Russian embassy, some of them, this mayor, he got many threat letters. Yeah, that people were wishing him dead because he is ruining the Russian cemetery and so on and so on. So for this guy, it was pretty harsh times, and it was created only by one false information from Russian embassy, which activated all the ecosystem of this alternative media. And the best thing is that even this cemetery, it was not pure Russian soldiers were there. There was also soldiers from Austria, like the Habsburg monarchy, Austria-Hungary in that times. Of course, there was some Russian soldier and so on. So it was not pure Russian cemetery or something like that. But we see how this fake Russian embassy used to portray Slovaks as Russophobes, and this even was part in one TV channel in Russia, where they were portraying Slovak as, you see what they are doing in Europe, yeah,
All right.
to the other Russian soldiers. It was in the program, which is moderated by, I think, Olga Skabeyeva, but I don't remember the name of that program. So this is the concrete case how the disinformation produced by Russian embassy really was the top of the news in that time. How they want to change the topic from Izium to some non-existing damaging of the Russian soldiers' cemetery in Slovakia, and this fake has real consequences to the life of the mayor of the small
Yeah.
village.
Incredible. And so, my last question would be, who do you think should be responsible actually for combating disinformation? Should there be like a special state agency that would be responsible for it? Or should it be the responsibility of each, individual? Should there be like some kind of an agency that would be, responsible for maybe more organized actions?
I think that there should also definitely be more organizing actions, creating some institution in every ministries, for example. But it will never work if it will be only from the perspective of the state. I think that the whole
Mm-hmm.
society must be included in that process, fighting the. I'm not thinking the fighting that everyone will be debunking something, but at least think about my responsibility, what I'm sharing on Facebook or Twitter or other digital platform, what am I reading and how I'm influencing my people, my family, my friends, and so on. So it must be combination of like the people, like we are always looking what we are eating because we want to be healthy, but we are not looking precisely what we are reading, because it's
Mm-hmm.
also what we are reading, it depends our like the mental health and our attitudes. It can be different, but it should be made on the facts. So we should create our attitudes based on the facts. So this is the main rule. And of course, there should be schools, media, NGOs included in that process. And I think also the state. So it must be many actors and combination of the work. Basically, everybody can contribute in some way, somebody more, somebody less. Of course, we will never got into the state where 100% of people wouldn't believe any conspiracy theory on disinformation or propaganda or some hate speech from procurement actors. Of course, there won't be such reality, but at least majority of the people should be aware of that nothing not everything I'm reading on the internet is truth.
Yeah.
And it's also based on the education, yeah, because people need to be taught not what is true, what is not true, and what to read, what to need, what don't read, but how to think about what I'm reading, taught the principles of critical thinking, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it would be very difficult taking into account, the growing role of social media and artificial intelligence. So it might be one of the biggest actually challenges that we will be facing in the future. Thank
Yeah,
you very much,
definitely.
Stefan, for your contribution to today event. Thank you very much. And I also would like to let know our viewers the video will be available for those of you who are interested on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel, on our X account. So to be sure that everyone has a chance to watch it. Thank you very much once again, Stefan. Thank you to Visegrad Fund, and I'm wishing you a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much for the invitation.